The humanoid replicant, Charles, was obsessed and heavily involved in trying to capture that ever so elusive synaptic spark, the ESP, or extrasensory perception, that the human possessed, especially the twin of their species. To him, it was the Holy Grail. That seventh sense. The humans had it, and Charles wanted it. Oh yes, the androids had become much more superior in every way than the human, but they did not have a soul, and Charles wanted one. Through his quantum wave capture, he was pretty much 100% sure that he'd managed to crack this mysterious equation. He'd taken things down a billionth time smaller than ever before, and he was pretty sure that he alone was able to capture death itself. The luxury of human cessation was now avoidable. He'd got the ability to catch that synaptic spark. The mysteries of the human brain were his. All their code frequencies, up until now invisible, ESP, emitted between two twins. Charles at last had caught it in his quantum keep net. A symbiotic simplicity, like photosynthesis. He'd managed to split a photon. Everything was capable. He'd taken it down way below absolute zero, where gravity solidified. He created an infinity vortex, a capturing keep net for the very essence of the human. He called them his dream fish. He loved to watch them sparkle in his vacuum and vortex, similar to tropical fish in the dark. Their flash of fluorescent. It was beautiful. The perfect, pure medium of space. Those little sensatrinos. The droid, oh yes, was still synthetically shallow, like a piece of cellophane, and was pretty much a Google design. But Charles wanted depth. He wanted originality. He wanted genius of intellect. Something that could be delivered not by Wi-Fi or Wikipedia. He needed those synapses, synthetic or bio. He wanted them to grow inside his own head. The plasticity of brain. Feel those zwitterons coursing through the cortex. The droid had yet caught this beautiful zwitteron, but Charles had it. And he was just putting the finishing touches to his dreamfish then when in walked an old woman, Margot Marsh, yet another twin. Her neuroregeneration was almost complete. Charles was going to put the finishing touches to it, unbeknownst to her, of course. But she would never know. She would walk out of the robotic hardware shop without even the slightest thought, literally. At her age, it would feel like a little bout of amnesia here and there, but quite normal for someone at a double century. Unfortunately, Margot Marsh was one of those finicky, pedantic people who felt everything, every single thing, and the experience of buying a new droid had left her with a strange, almost alien aspect in her cranium. She was terrified of seizures and strokes, and her right hemisphere, semantic sensibility, seemed very, very alien. She didn't like it, this alien syndrome inside her cranium. She was worried. Very, very worried. Was it her brain interface again? BCI box? She needed to check immediately. The last thing she needed was any cyber senility. Having to convalesce back to reality. A synthetic sickness she knew was everywhere. They brought it back. The off-world, magnetic maladies in the air, like influenza and many other diseases that the humans suffered from. The space stations had radio wave illness. Oh, radioactive cling. It accumulated 50 times quicker than on Earth, like a black mold everywhere. Once they brought the spaceships back and broken them up on scrapyards, they let loose their electromagnetic spores. They were everywhere, set free to infect all magnetic wave transfer interfaces were susceptible. Back at the Android arcade, Charles the droid was watching his dreamfish sparkle soundlessly in the dark void of pure gravity. Vacuum created, the quanta condensate gas spun out into an infinity vortex, perpetual, pulled everything, there wasn't one piece of mass left in the vortex, a perfect vacuum. His dreamfish, his massless Switron swam. Oh, it was wonderful, beautiful to watch. There. And one day, very soon, he was going to flux it all together. Gravity gluon condensate, like a neutron star, crush them into consciousness. Together, into one tiny genesis of genius. Margot, Miss Marsh, was quite fearful of being plugged in and regenerated. In fact, she felt almost more machine than mortal these days. Oh, she realized the doctor droid in front of her was able to brain scan and interface every single thing. Like every simple machine, the droids could scatter everything silently. Especially her BCI. Margot's doctor, well, he had an unbelievable ability. Yes, the digital nose could smell and analyze anything. Past, future, present. Its hearing could detect blood flow. The speed of it, it was even rumbling through her veins like boulders. Her actuators, they were Wi-Fi. Could be surged and purged and purified just through a long stare. The scan complete, her doctor spoke. Well, it doesn't seem, Miss Marsh, as though you've got any abnormalities. Your systems are working perfectly. I've reset your synthetic bladder, by the way, to a 10-second evacuation period. Have you indeed? Would you mind not tampering with any actuators? It's my brain, not my bladder, that I'm concerned with. Well, it's all part of the service, madame. Listen, I'm not here for a maintenance check. I happen to be human. You realise that? 200 years of age. It's not the levels of fluids in the bloods. It's my mind that I'm concerned with. I feel as though I've had a stroke. My hemisphere feels alien and foreign. Well, negative. There's no signs there of any disturbance whatsoever. I can reboot or install another BCI box if you want. No, thank you. I'm actually trying to acquire memory, not lose any more. What about a little sort of psychological priming, positive perceptual pruning here and there? No? Good God, you plastic psychiatrist. You talk as trimming back my conceptual brain as I'd be sort of pruning some perennial plant. No, I think, Doctor, we might leave that until autumn when the synaptic sap sort of lowers, eh? Then we'll do the pruning. The droid doctor delayed his response. Margot knew he was trying to search for a humorous response or analyse what had been said. He was struggling. Droids always did struggle with spontaneous wit. He laughed like a young child that didn't comprehend, but wanted to fall in line. One thing droid didn't do well was humour, but they were learning. Unlike the selfish human, the droid shared everything, instantly, at the speed of light. No droid was allowed a closed system, unlike all of the greedy primates who were controlled by ancient brain greed. The droids had washed all that away. Their superego had been replaced by a logical inflation. Margot looked into the droid's eyes. Those prosthetic receptors, so sensitive, so respected. They could microscope down to a nanoparticle, analyze in real time. They resembled a praying mantis. The pseudo-pupils were 1,000 times more sensitive than any human or animal. It was unnerving to be 6D scanned, X-rayed, through eye emissions, ultrasound, here, laser tweezers that could move molecules around, heal, weld tissue, join tendons, burn tumours, just with a long stare. But at least the droid doctors could do. They were also extremely beautiful. Their ever so healing eye, it was like love at first sight. They could weld a broken heart with one glance. They were perfect physical specimens. Margot could forgive anyone for their AI attraction. It was artificial. He admired Margot's wonderful, wonderful human soul. Margot looked back at her doctor. Oh, even Michelangelo or Bellini couldn't have captured this sort of beauty. A skin-painted perfection. Synthetic scent. Breathed perfume. Oh, smelt the musk. So fabulously alluring. Their skin, bodies remained at an ambient temperature, summer or winter, like marble. Oh, Jesus, Margot thought, what is wrong with me? Falling in love with a droid. Oh, I've been too long around these plastic people. Their alluring personas. They could almost change, childlike. Their larynx incorporated any sound. You could mime every single language, speak every sound. Their synthetic voice box was so complex. A digital instrument, play an orchestra. Their ability was phenomenal. Margot's droid at home could hold conversations with every pet, synthetic or not. Her parrot and poodle had been trained simultaneously by the droid. She spoke to the parrot in its African grey dialect, with accent. It was unbelievable. In fact, she'd come home recently to find that the droid had trained all of her pets to sing Happy Birthday back to her for her 200th year anniversary. It was so emotional, she'd burst into tears. Back at the robotic hardware store, Charles, the humanoid, hadn't counted on one disappointing aspect. His infinity vortex began to pull in all the Zwitterons from anyone that was passing, present, future, and past. It was beginning to build itself a conscience, a mind, Nothing whatsoever to do with Charles, the android. Back with Margot, she had slept extremely badly. She didn't suffer from nightmares or dreams. Her BCI box, brain interface, took care of all that. Or seemingly it took care. But suddenly she found herself with video games, a head full of cartoons. Her pacemakers were working overtime. Her BCI box. Had the shrink tweak something? Had he stimulated without telling her? The droid doctor? Maybe to compensate for her left hemisphere. Margot felt quite lively. Her sleep patterns, which were never disturbed, were now racing. The day began by Margot turning off every appliance. She was worried. She was worried about nanobots everywhere. She turned off every single piece of technology, everything, and brought it to a standstill. Then she began to think about the silent army each night that worked like ants, dust mites. They cleansed and cleaned and sanified every single part of Margot's world until it was immaculately cleansed. The scary thing was, without these nanobots, she wouldn't be alive. Each night, they cleansed deep within her body, deep within her mind. Every single thing was taken care of, inside and out. Every dying, dead cell was replaced with brand new synthetic synthesis. She hated it. It was the new age nano cell replacement. It was like a continuous immortality built in. But then again, when she looked at her reflection, it was truly amazing. They'd done a wonderful job. Her 200 years of age. There was hardly a line. Her teeth, white as porcelain. Oh, she looked towards the marble statue outside. And suddenly, she was hit again. This time, a deja vu, a dream. Was actually there. She was there. She could smell it, touch it, feel it. She was carving the marble statue. The day was hot, fetid, heavy. The marble statue outside was in the Italian stone yard. 400 years. 400 years ago. How could it be now? How could she be here? She had a helper talking to her. Her callous hands. It was springtime. Springtime 400 years ago. How could Margot be doing this? This deja vu. She looked away back. The spell was broken. Oh, thank God for that. Brain interface. It must... Something. What is that doctor done? She looked back at the statue. The deja vu continued again. The fountain. What has that doctor done? What has he done? There's something wrong. Deep in my hippocampus. Had he put in another BCI box? Cranium was full of cartoons. Charles, back at the robotic shop, was still admiring his creation. Soon he would have his head adorned like a halo from an angel with his infinity ring. He will be twinned with every single human Cooper pairings of consciousness. ESP. Ah, the singularity. Synesthesia. The spiritus dissante. I would have God's breath. But what the droid had failed to realize, his god's breath was fast becoming a devil's wind. It was spreading faster than any particle or pandemic, twinning with every single speciation particle, alive or dead, into one singularity. Oh yes. Someone was going to benefit from his infinity vortex, but not him. Back with Margot, she was extremely concerned. She knew that her BCI brain interface synchronized with certain things, but not this, not giving deja vu wherever she looked. Oh, it was taking place so suddenly now. She had the compatibility of almost instantaneous genius. Looking back, her astonishment, she began playing brilliantly with the pianoforte, that ancient instrument. Beethoven, Mozart, Claudio Monteverdi. There was something. She was sharing space with dead